Imagine being betrayed by those you trusted most, thrown into the heart of the Atlantic Ocean, left to face sharks, storms, and starvation. This is the story of Pastor Thomas Peter, a Navy chaplain whose honesty led to a trial no one could survive, except by the grace of God. For 7 days, he floated, bound and broken, yet God's hand never left him. What happened next will shake your soul and lift your spirit. Stay with us to hear what God has done for Thomas, and what he can do for you. Please, listen to this incredible testimony of divine rescue, and if you're moved, comment below. God is the greatest and will forever be. Hit that play button, and let's dive into this miracle.
I'm Pastor Thomas Peter, a Navy chaplain aboard the USS Redemption, and my life unraveled the day I spoke the truth too loudly. It was a crisp morning in 2025, off the Virginia coast, the Atlantic stretching endlessly before our ship. For 10 years, I'd served as both spiritual guide and officer, balancing sermons with salutes. But my honesty, my refusal to turn a blind eye, became my crucible. It began with Lieutenant Harris, a man with a silver tongue and a knack for bending rules. He'd been siphoning off supplies, fuel, rations, medical kits, funneling them to the black market. A young sailor, trembling in the confessional, let slip enough for me to connect the dots. As a pastor, I couldn't ignore corruption. As an officer, I couldn't shirk duty. So, I took my findings to Captain Wells, backed by inventory logs I'd meticulously checked. The crew turned on me. Harris was their hero, a leader who slipped them extra coffee or turned a blind eye to minor infractions. To them, I was a traitor, a sanctimonious preacher meddling in their world. By supper, my tray was accidentally spilled. In the corridors, men bumped me with purpose. I knelt in my cabin that night, praying for guidance, but the storm was already brewing. Past midnight, they came. For men, Harris's shadow among them, yanked me from my bunk. A rag stifled my cries, zip ties bit into my wrists. They dragged me to the deck, the night air sharp with salt. Harris's voice was a low hiss, "You should have stayed quiet, Pastor." Before I could plead, they hoisted me over the rail and hurled me into the sea. The water was a brutal shock, cold and unyielding. My bound hands flailed as the ship's lights vanished. Sharks would come, I knew, stories of men devoured haunted every sailor. Yet, as the waves pulled me under, a calm settled over me. Lord, if this is your will, I'm ready. In that dark abyss, I felt God's hand, steadying me against the void. The first day adrift tested every ounce of my faith. The Atlantic was a merciless expanse, gray and churning under a sky heavy with clouds. My life vest, standard Navy issue, kept me afloat, though my zip-tied hands throbbed, useless against the waves. Saltwater burned my eyes and throat, each swallow a reminder of my fragility. I was nothing but a speck in God's vast ocean. I prayed to stay sane, murmuring psalms through chattering teeth. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. The words were my lifeline. Sharks circled, their fins cutting the surface like blades. I'd heard tales of men torn apart in minutes, yet each time a shadow neared, it swerved away. Was it chance? No, I felt God's protection, a shield in the deep. Hunger gnawed by noon, and thirst was worse. My lips cracked, my tongue swollen. I scanned the horizon for rescue, but saw only waves. Memories flooded in, my childhood in Georgia, preaching my first sermon, joining the Navy to serve both God and country. Why had honesty led me here? I wrestled with doubt, but clung to faith. The Lord is my rock. Night fell, and the cold deepened, my body shivering uncontrollably. Yet, I survived, buoyed by something greater than myself. By the second day, exhaustion was my constant companion. The sun rose, a pale disk through the haze, offering no warmth. My hands, still bound, had gone numb, the zip ties cutting into my wrists. I tried to kick toward an imaginary shore, but the sea mocked my efforts. My mind wandered, tempting me to despair, but I fought back with prayer. Deliver me, O Lord, from the deep waters. A seagull landed on a piece of driftwood nearby, its beady eyes watching me. I envied its freedom, but it reminded me I wasn't alone. God's creatures were his messengers. I spoke to it, my voice hoarse, "Tell me, friend, is help coming?" It flew off, leaving me to the waves. That afternoon, a shadow loomed beneath me, a shark, larger than the others. My heart raced, but I whispered, "Lord, protect me." The beast circled once, then vanished. I wept, not from fear, but gratitude. Thirst was torture now. I tilted my head to catch rainwater from a brief squall, but it wasn't enough. My thoughts turned to the crew. Did they regret their act? Did Harris feel a pang of guilt? I prayed for them, forgiveness mingling with pain. As night fell, stars pierced the sky, and I felt God's presence stronger than ever. I was still alive, a miracle in itself. Day 3 brought a new enemy, loneliness. The sea was silent save for the slap of waves, and my own voice was my only company. I recited scripture, sang hymns, anything to drown the silence. My body weakened, hunger clawed at my stomach, and my skin blistered from salt and sun. The zip ties, unyielding, drew blood, but I refused to let pain win. I began to hallucinate. My late wife, Sarah, appeared, her smile as warm as the day we met. "Keep going, Thomas," she whispered, her voice blending with the wind. Was it God speaking through her? I clung to the vision, letting it fuel me. A piece of driftwood floated by, and I hooked my arms around it, easing the strain on my body. It felt like a gift, a small mercy in the vast cruelty of the sea. I thought of the crew's anger. My honesty had threatened their loyalty to Harris, their sense of brotherhood. I'd preached forgiveness, but had I judged too harshly? Doubt crept in, but I pushed it away. God sees the heart. I prayed for wisdom, for the strength to forgive those who'd cast me out. By nightfall, a distant light flickered, a ship. My heart leapt, but it faded. Hope flickered, but didn't die. By day 5, my body was betraying me. My lips were cracked, my throat a desert. The driftwood kept me afloat, but my strength was fading. The sharks returned, bolder now, their fins slicing closer. I prayed without ceasing, my voice a rasp. "Lord, if you spare me, let me serve you better." Faith was all I had left. A storm hit that afternoon, waves tossing me like a toy. I clung to the driftwood, coughing seawater, my life vest straining. Lightning cracked, illuminating the chaos. I should have been terrified, but I felt alive, as if God was reminding me of his power. The storm passed, leaving me battered but unbroken. I laughed, a weak, delirious sound. How was I still here? Memories of my ministry surfaced, sailors I'd counseled, families I'd comforted. Had I failed them by being too rigid? Honesty was my calling, but had I wielded it like a weapon? I prayed for Harris, for the crew, asking God to soften their hearts as he was softening mine. As the sun set, a fish leapt nearby, its scales glinting. It felt like a sign, life persisted, and so would I. On day 7, I was a shadow of myself. My body screamed for rest, my mind blurred with exhaustion. Yet, faith held me together. I'd survived sharks, storms, and starvation. God's hand was undeniable. That morning, a speck appeared on the horizon. A boat? I blinked, afraid it was another hallucination. But it grew closer, a small fishing vessel. I waved my bound arms, shouting until my voice gave out. The boat turned, its engine humming. A man leaned over the bow, a weathered fisherman, his face kind but wary. "You alive out there?" he called. I nodded, tears streaming. They hauled me aboard, cutting the zip ties, wrapping me in a blanket. The fisherman, Amos, said they'd spotted me by chance, fishing off their usual route. I knew it was no chance, God had sent them. Amos fed me broth, my first sustenance in days. His crew, a mix of grizzled men and a young deckhand, listened as I told my story. They didn't press for details, but their eyes held sympathy. "You're a miracle, Pastor," Amos said. I smiled weakly. "God's miracle." They radioed the Coast Guard, and I learned the USS Redemption was under investigation. My report had sparked action after all. The Coast Guard cutter arrived at dusk, its lights a beacon of salvation. I was weak, sunburned, and scarred, but alive. As they transferred me to the cutter, I thanked Amos and his crew, promising to pray for them. They waved me off, humble in their heroism. Aboard the cutter, medics checked my vitals, marveling at my survival. 7 days out there, one said. That's divine intervention. I nodded, too tired to speak. Back on land, the Navy launched a full inquiry. Harris and his accomplices faced court-martial, my evidence corroborated by others who'd found courage to speak. Some crewmen apologized, their anger replaced by shame. I forgave them, preaching reconciliation in my first sermon back. We all falter, I said, but God's grace lifts us. The congregation wept, and so did I. I returned to the sea months later, not as a chaplain but as a guest on Amos's boat. We fished under a clear sky, and I felt whole again. My ordeal had taught me that honesty, tempered with love, was my true calling. God had spared me, not just to survive, but to serve anew. As the waves lapped gently, I whispered, "Thank you."